Welcome to Predators Proclivity, where we look at data from the season for the NHL Nashville Predators and make comments upon it. I am your host, Preston Proctor. And today is a special edition of Predators Proclivity. We have a guest. I warned you guys about, and gals, you people, about this, and Prudence is here today. Prudence has some questions to ask me about what the heck I'm doing when I'm down here staring at my computer for hours. And I thought that was a little unfair, but she's going to do it anyway. So Prudence, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Thanks, Preston. It's a thrill to be here. As you know, I'm a huge fan of the Nashville Predators and a huge fan of this podcast. And so I'm so excited to have the chance to talk to you face to face and get some of my questions answered.
Well, face to face, okay, that's not literal, but hey, you know, the audience can't see us, so what do they know?
That's right. Well, wait a minute. What does the audience know? Maybe that's hurting the popularity of your podcast, criticizing the audience like that.
No. I mean, there's no video. Just saying, there's no video. They can't see where we're at. We could be in different rooms, different continents. They wouldn't know. I mean, that's, and I think they prefer it that way. My hair generally isn't ready for TV, so I think voice only. You know, I have a face for radio. So.
Well, Preston, I think your hair looks great today. Just so the audience knows.
Great, thank you. Welcome to Predators Hair Week. We are visiting different hair salons and talking about hairstyles. Sorry, all of you people dialing in to listen to Hockey Talk are in trouble. Oh, Hockey Talk's probably copyrighted. To talk about hockey.
Well, okay. I just want to say I think hair in hockey is a big part of it. They all grow out the beards for the playoffs, so there's a big hair component there. And a lot of the great hockey players have, you know, noticeable hair, have like the stringy long hair look or other types of hair looks. So, you know, I think really there could be a whole new segment of your podcast talking about the hair of the hockey players.
You're not dissing Mark Messier, who is bald, right?
Well, no, that's just another choice.
Another choice. Okay. So it's just a different hair choice of not having hair.
Okay. All right. So anyway, Preston, I get your point. We'll stop talking about hair and start talking about hockey.
Fabulous.
All right. So my first question, Preston, and I know you talk about this on every podcast, but I just wanted to dig into it a little bit deeper. Do the Preds have any chance at all of making the playoffs? And if so, what confluence of events would have to take place for them to get into the playoffs?
Nope, no chance. Next question. No. Obviously, I got a little long-winded yesterday talking about the LA Kings. I explained that you were also a Kings fan, so nobody will be shocked here. But talked about back in when we would watch the Kings play Jiminy Cricket. Come December, January, you'd swear they'd given up playing the sport of hockey, and they would just suck. You know, October, November, they'd be playing well, and you'd be thinking, oh, hey man, you know, they're looking good. They're looking good, and then December rolls around and Drew Doughty would have to go, you know, if he had a girlfriend, right? I mean, it was always the worst if Doughty was dating somebody. And if they showed up at the game, forget about it. But and I hate to pick on Drew Doughty, especially since he's not playing, not his fault. But they would basically suck in December and January, and then they'd get it together, and they'd find a way to sneak into the playoffs as the 8th seed. And we know in 2012 and 2014, as the 8th seed, the Kings wound up winning the Cup with Mr. Jonathan Quick in goal.
So I don't think they were the 8th seed in 2014.
They were in my universe. Okay, in 2012 they were, in 2014 maybe they weren't, but either way, they generally sucked. We always felt like they kind of sucked in December and January, and worked their way out of the playoffs, and they worked their way back in. And so the Preds are not mathematically eliminated yet, and you have to look at I would say look at two things. Last year, the Preds were kind of in a funk. Went back and looked, and last year, the 4th of January, they played 39 games, and overall they were 21-17-1, which is better than this year, granted better than this year. But then after they had that whole drubbing by Dallas, the 9-2 drubbing in Dallas, they went on an 18-game point streak where they went 16-0-2. Hey, there's 32 points right there. So this year the Preds are stuck here at 12-20-7 with 29 points, and if they wound up getting 32, 34 points, all of a sudden they're sitting at 63 points, and 93 points looks a little more reasonable. Now they have to go on a little bit longer streak for that. And I'd say the other thing to look at is if you look at the Rangers this year, after trading Jakob Trouba, went from being in a playoff spot, potentially, according to the analysis I did back just the middle of December, I had them being at least the first wild card team in the East, to now being out of the playoffs and probably and potentially tied for the worst record in the entire Eastern Conference. So just 2 weeks later, huge difference in the potential fortunes of the Rangers. So yeah, I think there's an opportunity. The problem is that change, whatever the Preds need to do, needs to happen in January now, because the trade deadline is March 7th, and sometime before that, just pick a month, say the beginning of February, and probably earlier, teams that want to make a run, think they can make a playoff run, are going to want to make deals, and they're going to want to make their teams better. And they're not going to go to Winnipeg to get a guy, because Winnipeg's in the chase. So they're going to have to go to the teams that are more than likely not going to make a playoff run and make trades and get players from them. So the question then becomes, what can the Predators do in the next month in order to make it seem to the people running the team that they can make a playoff run, and what to do about it, right? How do the Predators get better between now and March 7th in order to put themselves in a position to make the playoffs? And so that's the question. And it doesn't necessarily have to come from a trade. If you remember, what was it, 2 years ago, the Preds were out of the playoffs. They traded away. I got the name wrong. It was he plays for Dallas now. Not McDonough, but I'm sitting here trying to find his name. But they made some trades, and Matt Duchene. And so, they wound up trading Duchene, maybe good, maybe not. Matt Duchene, let's see. Oh, Matt Duchene, we played Dallas the other day. Matt Duchene, oh, look at that. He is the goal leader for the goal leader, assist leader, point leader for Dallas. So was that a good move for the Preds? I don't know. But what we did see was they brought up all those players from Milwaukee, I think like Evangelista and the couple of guys that play on his line. And those guys really took the game over, and the Preds played better with those guys. So you didn't necessarily need to trade somebody to bring them in, but you needed to do something in order to change the dynamic of the team. So I think, yeah, the Preds could make a playoff run. It's all in whether they do or not.
I think that's really helpful. So I think what you're saying is they're going to have to go on a big winning streak like they did last year. And something's going to have to ignite that winning streak. Last year, it was the humiliation of the 9-2 loss to Dallas, kind of like the humiliation of Ohio State losing to Michigan has lit a fire under them. Sometimes that can happen.
Sometimes. Yeah.
And or some personnel shakeup type of thing. But they're going to have to shake up something and shake up something soon. If they wait until February to go on a big winning streak, probably too late.
Oh, definitely too late. Definitely too late. If they, if they do, what was that date? It was made it down here. I'm thinking it was a February 18th U2 concert. By this U2 concert was February 17th. By the middle of February, forget about it. If they haven't done something by the middle of February, there's no playoff chance. They're just too much in a hole right now with was it 29 points, 31 points. Sorry, they won last night. So 31 points. So they need somewhere around 93, 94 points. It's at 62 points. They only have 43 games left, and they need 63 points. So the math there is starting to look like you have to win every game, right? So and that's not going to happen. So yeah, they need to do something. They need to do it in January. I guess for the I did this myself the other day. For the less hopeful among us. In the last 10 games, the Preds were, now they've won again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5, 1, 2, 5. So in the last 10 games, they're 5-5. Hey, they've only won 12 games all season. And in the last 10 games, they've won about half of them. So are they playing better? You'd have to say yes. It doesn't feel like it because they had like this 3-game losing streak. But yeah, that 10-game stretch is the best 10-game stretch they've had.
Wow. So their best 10-game stretch has been at 500.
Well, yeah.
That doesn't sound like a playoff team to me.
It does not sound like a playoff team. It does not. The Preds started off losing their first 5, and everybody wanted to make a big deal about the fact that they did that no team had ever lost their first 5 games and made the playoffs. And okay, that's true. But Edmonton went like 2-10 to start their season last year, wound up in the Stanley Cup playoffs, Stanley Cup finals. And Nashville was better than 2-10 after 12 games. Yeah, it's not how you start; it's how you finish.
But they have Connor McJesus. Anyway,
much to say about that.
I wanted to ask you some questions about why we find ourselves in such a position, because I know you and I chatted in the off season. And we were pretty excited about the changes that the Preds made in the offseason, bringing in Stamkos and bringing in Marchand. But it feels like that has not paid off. Can you talk about why they made those trades and what why the impact hasn't been what we think it might have been?
Well, the impact of the trades, I think. I think it shocked. I think it had to shock everybody. I mean, just absolutely for the Preds to open up the purse and to go out there and to get a couple of big name players. And oh boy, I can't tell you how excited I was when Steven Stamkos. Now, Jonathan Marchand, okay, he was a big deal. He won the Stanley Cup last year. He was the Conn Smythe winner. He was the captain of the Vegas Golden Knights. Pooh.
Well, okay, if that's how you want to look at it.
Okay, maybe I'm jaded because I hate Vegas, and he just happened to play for them. But yeah, okay, so good player. I guess I'd never really paid that much attention to him. But Stamkos, such a skill player, and when it comes to knowing where you're at on the ice and where your players are and stuff like that. I always thought very exciting player to have, captain of the Tampa Bay Lightning, won the Stanley Cup twice, not just once. But yeah, very exciting. And then the other addition, Brady Skjei, which took me a while to figure out how to pronounce, Skjei, an American, by the way. Never would guess either of those things. But Brady Skjei, another big acquisition. On the fence on him, and he's a defenseman, and Nashville's defense has been horrid this year. So I think there was a lot of excitement about bringing in Marchessault and Stamkos, because when you watch the Preds play, just from my standpoint, when I watch the Preds play, you watch what Forsberg does on the ice, how he makes his passes, where he's at on the ice, and the guy has a hockey intelligence off the chart and skill. Before Stamkos came on the team, and maybe still, Forsberg, the highest skill player on the team and the best hockey intelligence. Now, Yossi, Riley, those guys are good, solid players that would be a welcome addition to any team. Not dismissing them at all, but they don't play the same. And you have to have the skill players to make everybody else better. And the problem is, when you only have one, that's all anybody has to focus on. So it makes it harder when you just have the one. So bringing in Stamkos, Marchessault adds, I hate this term, you hear it so much, gravitas, but adds a skill level to the team that they didn't have before. Okay, now maybe, and no disrespect to Matt Duchene, Ryan McDonough. I didn't see you guys play as much. Matt Duchene obviously has the skills, score, which we could really use that on the team right now. But there's something to the team coming together and gelling, and there's something to the players being open and working together. And I think they had trouble with that. And I think part of it could be that the defense that, at least initially, Nashville's defense was in a little bit of disarray, and I didn't understand why, because we had 5 of the 6 same people on the line than we did last year. The only new person in the top 6 was Brady Skjei. I don't understand why the defense seemed to not know what they were doing. But at the beginning of the season, the other team were consistently getting breakaways, odd man breakaways, and scoring. And you can't put all that on Saros. Yes, not my favorite goaltender, but he's a quality goaltender, and there's only so much a goaltender can do. So all these odd man rushes, all these something the Predators have done since we've moved here is you get the guy by himself in front of the goaltender and somebody passes the puck to him. Well, good luck to the goaltender. And it just happens over and over again. You get the defense are running around like they're 5th graders chasing the soccer ball. It's just one big pile of 5-year-olds running around chasing the soccer ball. And the Predator defense kind of looks like that. And so I think when there's a problem in the defense, the forwards can't be as aggressive and can't play their position as well, because in the back of their mind, they're worried they're going to have to get back and help out on defense. So I think that initially was a big problem with the forwards coming together on their line in order to bring things to bring all of that potential to bear. I still think we've got problems in the defense. I don't think it's affecting the front lines as much. Now I think we did win the game last night. They moved the forwards around to different lines, trying out different line combinations, and somehow we've got the three skill players all playing together, which is a problem because it allows the other team to focus on one line, and so I think that's where we're at right now. We've got Marchessault, Stamkos, and Forsberg all playing on the same line together.
Okay, so I have about 300 questions.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
I could get long-winded at times.
Okay, so my first question is, I'd never thought about this before, but what you seem to be saying is that the problem with an offense can be the defense. If the defense is poor, it pulls the forwards. They have to do more work to try to help with the defense, and they're less free to score. I never thought about that. I always thought as offense and defense is separate. Like in football, they're clearly separate. Well, they're not necessarily separate, right? If your offense can't stay on the field, your defense gets worn out. So there's always a relationship, but that's something I hadn't thought about before.
Yeah, I talked about this a little bit. But I'm looking it up now because it's driving me crazy. Terry Murray, that's the guy that I was thinking of. Terry Murray was the head coach for the LA Kings from 2008 to 2011. That's the guy I was thinking of, and didn't want to do that. One of the things that, if I think I'm remembering this correctly from my history with being an LA Kings fan, is that when Anze Kopitar, who is the hands down one of historically, if not every year, the best defensive forward in the league, and he's actually won that award a couple of times, which is incredible because he plays in the Western Conference, but. When he came into the NHL, he did not play the full length of the ice. And so that was one of the things that Terry Murray did, was convince him that in order to improve his play, he's got to play the full length of the ice. And so to your point about the forwards playing defense, it really falls more on the center. Mm. The wings don't necessarily play as much defense, but the center, or at least one of the forwards in a forward line, has to be more engaged in playing defense or has a mind to playing defense. And for the LA Kings, when Kopitar's on the ice, he's the defensive forward. So, what that means is that, when they're doing the cycle and they're passing the puck around, there are opportunities for a defenseman to come off the blue line and engage in the offense. And when that happens, somebody's got to take his place back on the blue line. So one of the forwards has to drop back in order for the defenseman to come forward. And it's just part of the normal flow. And it's just knowing where your teammates are on the ice. I liken this to, I never played basketball professionally, but I played a lot of basketball. And just being aware of where your teammates are on the ice, where the other players are, and rotating to make sure that your team is in a good defensive position when you're playing offense, and when you're playing defense, make sure you're in a good offensive position when you're playing defense. So when one thing you don't want. I mean, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But 5 guys crashing the board and having their 2 guards at mid-court. So if you don't get the rebound, they get the easy layup. You don't want that circumstance to happen. So you've got to make sure that somebody is back and playing defense, even when you're on offense. And then the same when you're playing offense. When you're playing defense, you don't want everybody down deep and then leaving people open in different places. So it's just an awareness of where your teammates and where the opposition is, and making sure that you're all flowing together and doing and working together. And instead of like if one guy takes the puck and goes behind the net, 2 defensemen don't follow him. One can follow him. The other one needs to make sure there's nobody in front of the net.
Okay. All right. So I have another question based on what you were talking about earlier. So you're talking about how Matt Duchene has been on fire in Dallas. And I remember I liked him when he was at the Preds, but he never seemed to perform all that great. You might say he underperformed his potential, and that seems to be holding true now that he's with another team. And now we have Stamkos and Marchessault, who were leaders and superb players on the teams they were before, and you might say they've underperformed since they've been with the Preds. What is it about being in Nashville or being a part of the Preds that takes these players that clearly have ability to score, and then they come here and it feels like they're not scoring like you would expect?
Well, I think part of it is chemistry, and I looked this up a few months ago. Simon Gagne. If you remember, years ago, the Kings made a trade for Simon Gagne, who had been an amazing player in Philadelphia. Brought him in, paid him a bunch of money, and he spent the season skating around the ice like he didn't even know where he was at, like he was a figure skater in a couples and a couples competition and didn't know where his partner was. And what a waste of money. And so in that particular case, I think he got his payoff, and he just wasn't interested in playing hockey, and he just didn't like being in LA or whatnot. And I think some of that can affect a player and a team if they get traded someplace, or they finally get their big payout and they feel like they have accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. They finally got that big contract, and now they don't know what they're playing for anymore, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that can be, I'm not saying that happened here. I don't think that happened here. You watch Stamkos and Marchessault, they're playing. And I would say, if I have a criticism about Stamkos' play, it's he's getting too many penalties, which in general the Preds are anyway. Way too many penalties for my liking. But Stamkos was almost leading the team in penalty minutes, and just going back, he's when I looked at what he had done for Tampa Bay and historically how many penalty minutes he would get, normally it was in the 30 maybe 36 minutes of penalties. Maybe he went to 40 one year, but where's he at? He's at 22. We're not even halfway through the season. He's at 22 penalty minutes. And he hasn't gotten a penalty, I don't believe, in the last couple of games, but it was like a third of the way in the season, and he had 20 penalty minutes, and normally he would only get like 36. Taking way too many penalties, putting the team in another team, and team in awkward positions. I think that just when you don't know what you're doing, you try to fall back on what can you do, and sometimes you overreach. And I think that's potentially why he's committing too many penalties. He's finding, you find yourself in a situation. We were at a high school basketball game last night, and the team we were pulling for got behind, and all of a sudden, all 5 people on the team decided they had to win the game themselves. So they bring the ball down, and they may as well not have a partner. Mm-hmm. And so I think that you can get into those situations when you like Stamkos, Marchessault, they're on a new team. It's a new system, which it's not like these guys haven't played hockey with a lot of different people. You'd think they would be able to adapt. But playing at that high of a level, I can see that adapting takes a little bit of time. We're halfway through the season. I feel like it should have happened by now. So I don't know.
So does it come down to coaching?
Well, I think a lot of it can come down to coaching. That going back to another L.A. Kings reference, Daryl Suter would have these guys. You didn't know what line you were going to be on. He had a system. This was what the system did. This is how you play. If you're playing this position and you're in this situation, this is what you do, and this is how they would play them. So he would mix up the lines, and people would talk about, you got Iafallo playing with Kopitar, and then you've got Matt Roy playing forward, and he's a defenseman. What's up with that? I try struggling for names here, but you got three guys that don't normally play together. And it's like, what are you doing? It's like, well, they should play together. This is the system. If they go on the ice, they should know what they're doing because of what they're playing, not because of who is on the ice with them, right? And and so that worked. That worked for the LA Kings. It worked for Daryl Sutter. You can also look at somebody like, let's make another football reference, Lou Holtz. Lou Holtz won everywhere he went. He won at South Carolina. He won, Natra? God, what's that? It's a coach somewhere up in Minnesota. I forget. They've got those shiny blue helmets. Notre Dame, whatever. Well, Lou Holtz was he wasn't the kind, like, describing who he is by who he's not. There are a lot of coaches, and a lot of coaches that are they're West Coast offense coaches, right? This is the scheme that he coaches, right? He knows how to coach that scheme. That's what he coaches. You get a player in, that player has to learn that scheme, right? Because that's the only scheme they're going to play. They're going to play the West Coast offense. Come, high water. That's what they're playing. And you get a guy like Lou Holtz that says, okay, I've got a couple of good running backs. I got a quarterback that can barely pass. I'll figure out how to make an offense, how to win games with who you got, right? And that is skill. And that's a whole different level. And there's not that many people like that. So I don't know. When it comes to the Preds, you get a guy like Stamkos, and you would think you could put him on any line and he would make the other guys better. That's your hope, right? You get everybody out there playing together and he can make anybody better. And I just don't think that's happened. They've tried him and Marchessault on other lines, and now we're back to playing the three of these guys on the lines because we got our three skill guys together, because Forsberg's proved he can play with anybody because we've made him play with everybody. He has the double shift. So Forsberg can go out there and he can elevate who he's playing with to a certain level. And I just have not seen that with Marchessault and Stamkos. They seem to only be able to excel when playing with another high-level player. Even to start the season, we had, I think it was Marchessault and Stamkos were on the second line with, maybe it was Lazan or somebody as the, not Lazan, he's a defenseman, but O'Reilly. I guess O'Reilly is the second line center. And so you'd have O'Reilly, good player. And with Marchessault and Stamkos, those guys are out there skating around. They're not performing. And tried swapping them with other people, and they're just the fit just doesn't seem to be there.
Okay. Well, I want to go back to the three of them being on the same line, because there's a few things you've said here that I want to reconcile. So first of all, you said when Forsberg was our top skill player, that was a problem because the other team could focus on shutting him down, and that basically gave them an upper hand, right? But now they've taken Forsberg and they put him on the same line with Stamkos and Marchessault. And so you would think that now you've got three skilled players out there. They can't shut just one of them down, and that line would be successful. And I do believe that those players have been more successful since they put them on the same line. So, to me as a casual fan, and clearly, I know 1% about hockey and about all these statistics to the level that you do, Preston. But to me, that seems like it's been successful, putting them all three on the same line. But you seem to be not high on that choice. So I just want to reconcile, like your what you were saying before. If it was just Forsberg out there, they could just shut him down, and that was a problem. Well, now they've got Forsberg with two other players that you have to look out for. So you can't just shut down Forsberg. To me, that seems like a good thing, but you are seeming to say it's a bad thing. So help me kind of work this out in my mind.
Yeah. So if all of your good players are on the same line, then what happens is the other team puts out their really good defenders and their shutdown team when those guys are on the ice. And that's the only time that they really need to be on guard. So what that means is their top defensive line will always be on the ice when Forsberg, Stamkos, and Marchessault are on. And if their top line is really good, then that will shut down that line. And they can, and then they put the forwards out there that are good defensive forwards. And that's the people who play when they're on the ice. And especially when you're on the road in hockey, when they're timeouts, the visiting team has to substitute their players first. And then so they can substitute their players, and then the home team gets to see who's on the ice, and then they get to decide who to put out on the ice, and that's one of the home ice advantages. So if the Preds are on the road and Stamkos and Marchessault and Forsberg go out to take a face-off, well, the home team can say, okay, well, now it's time for our top defensive line to go out and our top defensive forwards to go out and to shut that line down. And if they're successfully able to do that, well, who's going to pick up the scoring? And then the other team still has everybody else that's left, depending upon the quality of who they've got, maybe they can make up the difference or not. So that it allows a team to be able to focus on one line, and forwards are only out there about a third of the game. So
so maybe that's contributing to our abysmal road record.
Well, I mean, you talk about, you think it's been working. Stamkos has scored one goal in like the last 20 games.
Oh, okay. All right. So Stamkos,
he's got one goal in the last 20 games.
But
he's got 2 assists.
Seems to
Marchessault went on a scoring tear for about 8 games. Yeah, that really seemed to get Marchessault off the schneid. Is that the term?
But Forsberg's kind of disappeared.
But Forsberg has not scored since November 25th. And there was, I heard something, I know Nyquist has gotten, Nyquist is he's the empty net king, Mr. Empty Net. Let's see, Forsberg got his empty net goal back November 2nd, so that was not his last goal. Forsberg has been getting a lot of assists. He's still been getting his points as assists on Marchessault, but he has not scored a goal, and I don't know that I really see that as a problem. I got kind of caught off guard when I was doing the background on the game with Edmonton, because I would have expected to see Connor McDavid and was it Draisaitl up on the top of the goal scorers, but they're not. Connor McDavid leads the team in assists. Mm. Somebody else is leading, and he's not even maybe in the top 3 of goal scorers for Edmonton, but he's an assist leader. And so what he's doing is he's out there, he's drawing a lot of attention, but making good passes, and other people are scoring. I think that's awesome. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where Forsberg is right now, because he doesn't have to be the top goal scorer, which is great. Connor McDavid's second with 15, but Draisaitl's first with 28. Big difference there, but Connor McDavid 39. Draisaitl's got the point lead, but he's more of an assist person now. He's 15 goals to 39 assists, and so I don't really see that as a problem for Forsberg if the rest of the team is being able to take advantage of Forsberg getting the attention, right? But you know, I don't know. And maybe it's working, maybe it's not. But
okay. No, that's really helpful. So another question that I had was around special teams. So when it comes to special teams, how are we doing? Are other teams scoring more points against us? Or are we scoring more points against them? I would say probably they're scoring more points against us because we have a losing record. And is that because we're just worse on defense on special teams, or are we just getting too many penalties?
Special teams. So a special team situation would be any circumstance where, and I modify this slightly when I do my numbers, but where there is an imbalance of number of players, or anything. I guess anything other. I guess the easier way to say it, anything that other than a 5-on-5 situation. So even balance of players being 4-4 and 3-on-3 would be special team situations, because it's not the normal circumstance of having 5 skaters on the ice.
It's special.
And so when you pull your goaltender, or the other team pulls their goaltender, and you're now 6-on-5 or 5-on-6, that's also a special team circumstance.
Oh, okay, I didn't think about it that way.
Yeah. So so I would the Preds, having such a bad record, they've given up a lot of empty net goals. They've given up 13. Now they got 2 last night, so now they have 10 of their own. So that kind of so there was a big imbalance in the number of 6-on-5 or 6-on-5 because the Preds pulled their goaltender, because they lost so many games within. Generally, if you're 3 goals or less, you'll pull your goaltender at the end of the game sometime in the last 3 to 5 minutes, and then the other team doesn't have to worry about a goaltender. And because the Preds have been losing so much, they've been pulling their goaltender more than the other guys, and the other guys have been taking advantage of that. So in a lot of my calculations, I take those goals out. But if you look at the 5-on-4 situations, the Preds in general, even though they're one of the top 10 teams in committee penalties, they have one of the best penalty kill units out there. And it was the best until the last couple of games, because they got a couple penalties against the best power play team in the league, and it finally went against them. In the first game against Winnipeg, or the other games against Winnipeg, they were able to commit penalties, and it didn't really hurt them. And it all came to roost against a team that scores 31% of the time on the power play. 31% of the time.
Wow.
So if you give them 3 opportunities in a game, they are going to score once. Now, the Preds dodged a bullet in the first couple games, but did not when they played them a couple of days ago. Even though the Preds are 89% in the penalty kill, now they were top, and now they're 5th after it might have risen back up after last night's game, but yeah, they're one of the top penalty kill teams in the league, but that's, top penalty kill team in the league going up against best power play. Something's going to give at some point, especially when they play 4 games. So in general, they've done well in the 5-on-4
so it's 5-on-5 that's doing them in.
5-on-5, anything with a 3 in it. There's not been that many 5-on-3 opportunities. There have been a few. There was one the other night against Winnipeg, and Winnipeg scored on it. The Preds have scored 0 in their 3 5-on-3 opportunities.
Oh my gosh, that's awful.
That's awful. Yeah, that is awful. Especially a couple of their 5-on-3 opportunities were significant minutes. More than one. I think they did have a 5-on-3 for 2 minutes, and they didn't score.
Oh.
And that's bad. The other teams have had 7, and they've scored 3. So at about half the time on 5-on-3, they're giving up a goal, which is bad. 4-on-3, the Preds have had 4 opportunities and not scored at all. So like I said, there's a 3 in there for them. But the other side has scored 3 times on 5 opportunities, so 60% of the time. So they're not looking good when they only have 3 people on the ice. And you look at their overtime record, which is, they had a 3 on 4 because they committed a penalty in overtime. So they gave somebody a power play on overtime. They only have 3 people on the ice already, which they don't excel at, and then they gave somebody a penalty. So, in the 9 overtime situations where they were playing 3-on-3, they're 2-7.
Wow.
So 3 anywhere when the Preds are playing with 3 people on the ice, they just do not score. They just do not play well.
Interesting.
And that's that's generally a different circumstance when usually it's 2 forwards and a defenseman, and so I think just trying to remember here, but I know Forsberg's always going out there first, and I think he goes out there with Marchessault, and then you got Yossi. So I think that's typically the first unit for the 3-on-3, and then those guys will be out there for a minute and a half, whatever.
Maybe that's why Yossi's plus minus is so bad. He's always out there on those 3 situations.
He is. He's going to be the guy out there. One thing that was kind of interesting when I was looking at the 5-on-3 or the 3-on-3 situations, it looks like a lot of times, at least for the Preds, that the goal is being scored in the first minute. Sometime around the first minute. They have gone longer, but lately it was because I missed a couple, so I had to go back and do it. It was like 101. Tampa Bay, the goal scored 1 minute, but that was a power play in overtime. Then 1 minute, 1 minute 7, 1 minute 3, 41 seconds. So like the last 5 overtimes have been settled at around the 1 minute marker earlier. And 2.5 minutes looks like the other popular number. Granted, 2 of those were Preds wins, but against the Kings the other night even.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, hey, we've been talking quite a bit, and actually I've learned quite a bit from this conversation, Preston, so I really appreciate you taking the time today to educate me. Your podcast is awesome, but sometimes there's questions that the less informed among us just don't quite understand. I just wanted to go back to one sort of central topic for this podcast before we close, and that is the second period. I know you started this podcast because you had a theory that the Preds were not good in the second period, and I think that turned out to be the case. What's happened this year? Are they still bad in the second period? Are they worse than they were last year in the second period? Really, how does their second period performance contribute to the overall performance of this team this year?
Let's see. So going back to last year, the first 39 games, let's just take a look at the goal scoring to begin with. The goal scoring was fairly even, 47-48 in the second period. At home, 23-26. On the road, 24-22. So the goal scoring was not hugely in imbalance last year. Fast forward to this year, just to kind of stay in the same vein, there's a huge imbalance in the second period. Overall, 29 goals to 44.
Oh, wow.
Overall, at home, 13-19, and then on the road, 16-25. So a huge imbalance. Let's see, also, was it 39 games? So the same date, we played the same number of games, which is really, really kind of handy. So last year, to this point, the other teams had scored 48 goals. This year, 44. So they've not given up as many goals, but only scored 29-47. Last year, their overall record, the second period at this point, was 13-16-10, which is not great. And this year, it's 11-19-9. So a little off. from just an overall winning the period standpoint from between last year and this year. Home record looks about the same, 6-10-6 versus 6-9-3. Obviously, the number of home games played this year versus home games last year at this point is different. But 6 wins, 10 losses to 6 wins, 9 losses. On the road this year, 5-10-6. Last year at this point, 6-7-6-4. So on the road, they have been playing worse in the second period than they did last year. But the numbers, oddly enough, the numbers are looking similar. Let's see, I don't know if my in-game statistics for last year are quite up to make the relevancy situation. No, that one's not overall. I don't have the numbers to correlate the second period between last year and this particular time period. So I guess the numbers on win loss tie for the second period look like they are similar, slightly worse this year than last year. The goal scoring is definitely down in the second period between this year and last year. So, you mean, in general, you'd have to say, they are playing worse this year than last year. The goal scoring really stands out from that when looking at those combinations.
So is it an endurance issue because they have those long changes in the second period?
The other team does too.
Oh, okay.
That's the other thing. They talk about, it's a long change, it's a problem. Well, both teams are playing the same way. Mm-hmm. It's not like the Preds have to play with a long change and the other team doesn't. I don't know. I struggle to figure out. I've gone back and I've tried to look at what other teams are doing in the second period. The other teams that are able to score. There are a number of teams that excel in the second period. The Capitals are one of those teams that one of the best teams for scoring as far as goal scoring in the second period. I think Toronto also another team that scores a lot in the second period. Winnipeg, I think, scores a lot in the second period, but they score a lot in every period. So taking a look at Seattle, another team that scores really well. Not a team that is playing well overall, but they are able to score in the second period. So going to take a look at the shift charts and trying to see what they're doing in the second period, and it's beyond me to understand what's going on. So I can't even posit a reason for why the Preds are so bad in the second period. I don't know.
All we can say is that they are.
All I can say is that they are. And all I can say is that they are. And if they win the second period, they win the game. And that's kind of true this year. I don't know that it was true so much last year, but if we just you look back last night, they beat Vancouver, getting the first goal in the second period, but they won the second period. They won the game. They lost the second period to Minnesota. They lost the game. They lost the entire game to Winnipeg, but they lost the second period to Winnipeg. They lost the game. And they did tie the second period against St. Louis, but they managed to lose the other two periods. So, and then when they won, then going back another game, won Carolina, they won the second period. They won the first and third. Hey, if you win 3 periods, you win the game. And I don't think I need to go through statistical analysis to justify that. And then the game against L.A. Had to go to overtime. One of those games where you win 2 periods, you lose 2 periods. They won 3. Again, they won 3 periods. But the potential for winning 2 periods, generally if you win 2 periods, you win the game. If you score 1 goal in each period, then the other team can come back and score 2 in the third, and that whatever the third period is. And the Preds have done that. Last year they won 2, lost 2. It only happened once last year. It was at home against Pittsburgh. Same sort of thing. Pittsburgh scored 1 goal in the first and second. Preds scored 2 in the third, and then 1 in overtime. So 1-2, lost 2. But if you win 2 periods, generally you win the game. But against the Kings, they won the first 2 periods, lost the third, who had to go to overtime. And then Pittsburgh, they lost the second period, which meant they had to go to overtime, lost in overtime.
Yeah, I think the Preds want to avoid overtime. Like you talked about earlier, 3-on-3 is not their friend.
3-on-3 is not their friend. 4-on-4, hey, they're good 4-on-4. I think looking back at the special teams and looking at the 4-on-4 situation, where's 4-on-4? 4-on-4, there's been 36 4-on-4 opportunities. The Preds have scored 4 times to the opponent's 1. So it's not, not a lot. What's it, 9%, or 11%, 1/9, 11%. But 4-1, so they're better playing in 4-on-4 than they are than the opposition. But yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, I guess it's about time to wrap this up. Just like, I guess you're a numbers guy, so I want to ask you to just take not a wild guess, an informed guess. What do you think is the probability that the Predators will manage to turn things around and make the playoffs?
Wow.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Preston.
Yeah. I've made a couple of statements in the podcast already. Not today, but I felt like in the last 10 games of the year, the Preds had to win. They had to go 8-2. They went 4-5-1, so they were way off. I don't want to give up the ship yet. What's the chance? I don't know. What's the chance that they get kicked out of a U2 concert again? There's always a chance. So you're saying there's a chance
until they're mathematically eliminated. There's a chance.
I'd say at this point, even though it's 31 points. 31 points. They got to get 63, 64 points. They've got how many games are left? 43 games left. 43 games left. Not halfway through the season. 43 games left, and they need 63, 62, 63 points. The math is not in their favor, but I just. I don't. We've talked a lot about different players. We've talked about Marcia Shaw coming in and Stamkos coming in and Skay coming in, and they're all skating around and they're all doing whatever. And Zvechkov, they brought Zvechkov up again, and Zvechkov is really good. They keep bringing in these players, and that players getting injured and going out. I just the Predators have too much talent to miss the playoffs. I don't. I want to say they're done. I really do. I can't.
I feel the inner struggle.
I can't. They are too good of a team. They are too good of a team. They've got too much talent that they're not going to figure this out. All they've got to do is get into the playoffs. They get 92, 93 points. That's still within reason. They still, they're playing Calgary tonight. They should beat Calgary tonight without any trouble. They should have had an easier time against Vancouver last night. Vancouver's missing their big defensive team. If the line of the 3 superstars was going to score, last night was the time, because Vancouver did not have their shutdown people, and they didn't. This is not going to continue. these, earlier in the season, you could see in interviews with Stamkos, he's frustrated. Marchessault, they're all frustrated. These guys are winners. Mm-hmm. They're too talented. They've got no trade contracts. So it's not like the Preds are going to be out shopping them. They just signed these guys. They're not going anywhere. I think they are going to make a run. I think they're going to make a run. I just percentage of them making playoffs. Just from a numbers standpoint, you'd have to say it's 10% or less. It's not good. It's not good. But they're just, these guys are too good not to make the playoffs. And there's a lot of good players that don't make the playoffs every year. I mean, there is. I mean, the Preds had a good team 2 years ago. They didn't make the playoffs. Everybody, the Kings don't make the playoffs every year. And you know how we feel about the Kings. But yeah, I just, these guys they're going to make a run. They're going to make a run. The season's going to be fun. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but they're too talented to keep playing like they are. They're not going to finish the season third, with just San Jose and Chicago behind them. They're going to at least be
third from the bottom. You mean
third from the bottom? Yeah, they're at least going to be middle of the pack by the time this is done. They're going to have had a run, and it's going to be some fun hockey to watch.
Okay.
I still believe that. I just don't know how they're going to get there.
Well, I think so too, Preston. And so I'm excited to see the turnaround, whether it's a YouTube concert or whatever it is that causes them to turn it on. But I'm hoping to see some good hockey.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see some good hockey when you're watching the Predators play. That's when it's really good to see. So, anyhow, well, I hope the audience appreciated you being here. I did. I appreciate you being here. I get to be a little bit too much long-winded and too much of a numbers junkie at times. But thanks for being here, Prudence. It was nice having you on.
It was really fun.
Great. I hope the audience enjoyed it. But anyway, go ahead.
Maybe I'll crash your podcast again at some point.
Yeah. Drop by. I'll make sure I do it when you're not here.
Are you really happy I'm on here or not?
It's a challenge, right? It's a challenge. It's a challenge in general. It's a challenge in general when big fan of old Rush Limbaugh, and one of the things he said is that when you start talking about numbers on the radio, you lose people, and it's nice to have a little bit of back and forth instead of sometimes I feel like I'm just here talking through numbers and wondering if anybody can pay any attention to anything I'm saying. But hey, I got these numbers. I got to do something with them. So I come into my studio here and I make my hour-long podcast, and I walk out of here feeling better about the fact that I spent so much time staring at these numbers. Yeah, it's fun. I was showing you some of the stuff on NHL Edge and Shift Chart, and there's so much data out there that it's. I didn't realize that I was such a data geek, but it's really interesting, and and for those Nashville Predators out there, my job and my statistics would be a lot more fun if you won more. Frankly, you look at these numbers and you're like, gosh, what are they doing? Well, they're losing. Okay, so what do they do in the second period? Hey, they're losing. What do they do in all these other situations? Well, they're losing. Hey, what if they do this? Well, they lost that game. And it's like, it'd be nice if there was some variance. Just saying. I keep thinking these guys are just listening to me going, hey, he's right. Why don't we play better?
Well, that hadn't occurred to us.
That we should play better. But gosh, some guy on the radio or some guy behind a microphone said play better. And, geez, he's right. Let's play better. Yeah, I don't know. There was I told you this story. I've told the audience this story. I went out, was playing basketball one day, went to a nearby neighborhood where I lived, and place I didn't play basketball a lot, but I knew they had a court, and just loved to shoot basketball. And went out there, and there were 5 guys out there playing, and I didn't know any of them. And so we wound up playing some 3-on-3. And the 2 guys that I got teamed up with, the 3 guys knew each other, and then there was the other 2 guys, and I guess those other 2 guys knew each other. I didn't know any of the 5, so I got paired up with the 2 guys that knew each other, and I had no idea if they spoke English. We never really talked. We just started playing basketball, and we just had the same mentality. We just felt the chemistry was there, and I think once the chemistry gets there for the Preds, they're going to play well. I mean, these guys are too talented to go out there, skate around, and lose game after game after game. And they don't like it either. That Simon Gagne, that's the guy's name. Simon Gagne was happy going to skating around, collecting his paycheck. Got traded the next year and made no impact on the Kings except ruining everybody's expectations and my forever memory of him being a great hockey player. But these guys are too talented, and they're going to get their chemistry. And it's just, when you're playing and you feel your teammates and how they're playing, it's so freeing, and these guys are going to get there. I just think they're going to get there. I just hope they get there in time to make a playoff run. Because it'll be, even if they don't, it'll be some fun hockey. So anyway, sorry.
Oh no, that's okay.
All right. Well, that's our podcast. Thank you, Prudence, again for showing up and being a good sport about me going on my little rants about the Kings and basketball and trying to relate it back to hockey. But anyway, and all of you out there, go Preds, playing Calgary tonight. Did my podcast on that game last night after the thrilling win against the Vancouver diving team, otherwise known as the Canucks, last night. Thank you, Preds. Loved that. Loved seeing that. Calgary will be another contest. Should be a good matchup. And who was it? The people to look out for in the Calgary matchup. Number 10, Jonathan Huberdeau. Last in, or near last in plus minus, and Nazem Kadri, number 91, last in plus minus, but second in goals. So those are the 2 guys. When they're on the ice, something's going to happen. So number 10, number 52, number 91 for Calgary. Watch them. It's going to be a fun game. Hopefully the Predators get a big win, and then we're going to go back to Winnipeg in a couple days, and we're going to make up for that loss. So I think the Preds are going to come home looking good. I really believe the Vancouver Calgary games are places where they could generate some momentum, and I really like to see them take it back to Winnipeg the other night. But we'll see how it goes. Thanks for listening. I'm Preston Proctor, and you've been listening to Predators Proclivity.